You have found Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggles, stories, and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. We are coming to you from the Sun Prairie Community Radio Studios, underwritten by Bank of Sun Prairie. My name, as you know, is James Kademan, business coach at Draw In Customers Business Coaching and author of The Bold Business Book. Today, we are welcoming / preparing to learn from Jenny Knight of Hand and Stone Massage. Jenny, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here.
How are you feeling today?
Oh, good. It's a little wet out.
It's a mess. Yeah, it's a crazy, crazy mess. So you have Hand and Stone Massage.
Yep.
All right. How long have you had Hand and Stone Massage?
Just a tiny bit over 3 years now.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's a little while. And where are you located at?
We're on Odana Road. We're right next door to the big Joanne Fabrics that's on the west side.
Gotcha. The huge Joanne Fabrics.
Exactly.
All right. Do you know, or you probably can tell me, Hand and Stone Massage is a franchise, right?
Correct.
So what made you decide to do a franchise versus just Jenny's hands?
Massages? Lots of reasons. The full name is Hand and Stone Massage and Facial Spa.
Oh, wow.
And,
okay.
Everybody that joins the organization or becomes a part of it laughs a little bit about why is the entire name so long.
Sure.
But the things that distinguish it are that they do facials as well as massages, that they cater to the wellness aspect of both of those services. And there's a real emphasis on how things can change over the course of time in your life.
All right.
It's kind of a deep concept. So the franchise itself was important to us for a couple of reasons. I know folks who think about franchises often will say, I don't want to write the book from scratch.
Sure.
If I just stare at a blank page, I will either never actually get up off my bum and start doing it, or B, I don't have the specific knowledge for a particular type of business, but I know business, or
Sure.
I know leadership, or I know management.
Sure.
So the benefit of going with a franchise organization is that somebody has gone through all of that. There's a little bit of back and forth as to whether or not a franchise actually is an entrepreneurial kind of enterprise, because some people will get really, really fine-tuned technical about the definition of entrepreneurship.
Boy, see, I would challenge that since there's risk involved.
There's an enormous amount of risk. In fact, the largest share of the risk, of course, is the franchisee, which is myself and
Sure.
my husband, Jason. So we were in that boat. We knew what our skill sets were, and we knew the time frame that we wanted to work on. And that is often the other factor that will steer people a little bit more over to the franchise world, is that they want to get something up and running, and they would love to have that corporate support. So
Sure.
not only do you not have to invent, something completely amazing that works, but you also don't have to run it through its initial paces and
Sure.
work out a bunch of kinks before you can actually kind of take off.
Make all the
and go with
mistakes.
it.
Sure.
No, I wish that the franchise had already made all the mistakes.
Sure.
But yeah, there are a lot of mistakes out there yet to be made, I'm sure. That
Oh, yeah.
unfortunately doesn't go away.
Sure.
But the key for franchising, I think, if it's key to know what your strengths are. You have to understand, actually, I should also say your strengths and your challenges. If you don't know or recognize what your challenges are, you should probably ask somebody, because it'll start influencing what type of franchise you want to look into.
Sure.
We narrowed the field down a lot from the wide world. I mean, we were looking at car washes, we were looking at locksmiths, we were looking at...
So it wasn't specifically massage.
It
was
was
a whole
not
gamut.
initially, but the wellness aspect was always a part of what we were looking at. And the reason why we actually went, there are several reasons, but one of the reasons why we went in the wellness direction, we even looked at hair salons. We looked at, they're all great, I have to
Sure.
say. They're it all in the end becomes about the people. It becomes about the people coming in and the people that you work with, and the how everything fits together. It's always about the people.
Okay.
But my husband and I came from backgrounds kind of out in the corporate world where really great client service was rewarded in what we did. So that was one thing that we knew that we knew.
Sure. Okay.
So we knew it was important to us. We knew that it was kind of the thing that kept us up at night. And it also resulted in really great client service. out the other end. Like
Sure.
that is the product that we had to offer, in our various, business avenues. So we thought, well, did we want to kind of go maybe the hair salon route, in which case it's a sort of a lower initial investment,
Sure.
but then you get multiple units and then you kind of like raise them all up together as a little garden?
All right.
Or did we want to kind of sink into something that was a little bit more like everything was kind of consolidated into
Sure.
one focus, and then we could pour our energies into that. And we thought, well, if it were one or if it were three, we knew we were going to put all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength into
Sure.
this. And so we thought, I think what we need to do is really go for a bigger nut and kind of
right.
have that be where we focus. So,
Sure.
Hand and Stone stood out for a lot of reasons. One of them is the entire wellness mindset. I think is starting to, it's not even just starting, it has taken hold.
Sure.
Just in communities across the country. It
Yeah.
almost doesn't matter what level experience you have with it before you first come to it. Most people have heard of it or know somebody that gets massages or facials or
Certainly.
understands, at least reads about it in magazines maybe,
Sure.
or listens, to that fun chat that's on TV shows sometimes about,
Right.
wellness or skincare or that kind of thing, whether you're a guy or a girl. It sort of like enters into our consciousness because, the whole, what is that, Palm Wonderful stuff with the
Sure.
pomegranate, antioxidants and all that kind of thing it's a part of our life now. I think people get that, the one thing you take with you everywhere in your life is you. And it's worth investing in if you can do something that actually helps you do what you do better. Or, it's just there's so many things about wellness
Sure.
that are already in people's mindsets in terms of lifestyle.
It's
And then-
interesting that you say that because my dad, right? My dad's an older guy. We're talking 70s. And he used to have a very physical job. He
Yeah.
owned his own business, distillery and milk. And we thought, hey, it'd be awesome if we get him a massage gift certificate for Christmas. And we get him one. He'd never had a massage before. And just what everyone in my family has. It's a thing, right? People love massages. So my dad goes there not knowing what it was. And he's like, this lady put me in this room. And she said to just undress to my comfort level. And he's like, I don't know what this lady's talking about. And he left. And he's telling me this, and I'm like, where did we go wrong? Something like I was under the impression that this was just known what happens, right? And he's not like, I didn't even think it was a technology thing, right? It was just like, where did we drop the ball on an awareness issue here with my dad? I'm like, you could have really used a massage if you would have just, like, was it a delivery point of view? Like,
We've even had clients that came in that were maybe in the same boat, but they chose to stay. And when they were told to undress to their, level of comfort, they actually did so and then remained on top of the plank.
okay, sure.
People come in, they're just very well-meaning, and they just don't know. And the therapists kind of have to shield their eyes and be like,
Sure.
what actually that is there for your comfort as well. And
Sure.
you can drape the blanket on top of yourself, and I'll be back in a moment.
Right.
Make yourself at home.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, no, it's great. There, people's familiarity definitely with things that feel like a spa are not always at the same level, but
Right.
that idea, that sense of, I got to take care of myself, or I would like to take care of myself, or this is actually worth doing. Lots of folks, you don't necessarily need material stuff so much. A lot of marketing trends and purchasing trends steer more a little bit towards experiences, and that sort of is along the same lines.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like I would rather go out and have a great meal with my friends, and I won't worry about that I'm driving the same car, for
Right.
4 years in a row.
Yep.
And that's totally fine. And I think part of that is what wellness plugs into, is this understanding that, I'm valuable and we're people, and this is going to be what my life is about, me
Sure.
taking care of what I need to take care of. So
Right.
there's a real appeal for that, but you're right. Not everybody understands the process. It can be a little bit intimidating sometimes. But the reason why Hand and Stone really stood out to us was because folks are at that spot now.
Sure.
We're kind of hitting this where all the streams of people's lives can kind of like run into this common stream of, I, need to take care of myself. I don't want to just like push and push and push and then like all of a sudden wake up and be like, I didn't live my life that whole time.
Right.
And so the wellness thing also in weird ways helps you be or do the things that you need better. if you take just a little bit of time, and so I think folks are waking up to that. So we knew that. We knew the strength of the industry. We knew that it was growing. The most recent stat that I read was somewhere in the area of 3.5 billion in sales for like franchise massage type businesses like ours. So
like
that's
in
not
2017?
even. I can't quote you the date.
Okay.
That is the one that I most read. Yeah, this is United States, and this was definitely within the past 2-3 years.
Okay.
For something, it's just an eye-popping amount.
That's
and
a fair amount of money.
Yeah, and that is just the franchise groups. That's not even the therapist that has their own practice or goes around to the nursing homes or that kind of thing.
Wow.
That's not even including clinics like GHC here in town, or there are some other places out. Other places that will incorporate massage therapy into their chiropractic practices, things like that. So it's it was a very, very specific statistic, but it is something that there are a zillion industries that are breaking out. The reason why we loved Hand and Stone in particular was also that the corporate group were
the corporate group that owns a franchise.
Exactly, the ones that own the rights, basicly, and that have developed the playbook and continue to inform on our day-to-day business. Basically, they're a fantastic partner. They, with all due respect to everybody that is in a franchise, they really, really stood out to us. I mean, we just thought there's something really special about this group.
Oh, nice.
And how involved they were. When we got involved, it was, like I said, just over 3 years ago. I should say about 3.5, because there's a whole latent period from when you first get involved with a franchise before you actually start, breaking ground.
It's not just sign the contract, open the door the next day, right?
No, not at all. So it's more like 3.5 years. But through the entire process, they made commitments and then kept following through on them. And they introduced us to part of the process of discovering if you even want to partner with a franchise, because it's going to be a significant investment of time, energy, resources, financial resources, and other resources. You got to know if you trust it, if you trust the model. There's no point in deciding you're going to go all this way to build up something that you've got a dream built into, and then you realize like, oh, but I don't like how they're doing something. That is really an awful situation to be in, where you're like, I'm just going to rewrite this playbook, and you didn't have time to do that in the first place. And then there's always the chance that you might be wrong about rewriting the playbook. So we had to know that the organization itself was strong. It was growing, just busting out growing. It is actually only a little over 10 years old from when it was first founded and began franchising. And in the past 3 years alone that we've been involved with it, we were like, I don't know, spa number 197, 198, something like that, somewhere just under 200. And it's already at like 336 or something just in the past 3 years out of that 10-year lifespan.
And is it mostly Midwest, or is that beyond?
It's actually, the Midwest was one of the, aside from Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, the Midwest was not the first area, or the earliest area to take root. A lot of our early adopters were on the East Coast.
Really?
The Jersey Shore part of New Jersey. The Philadelphia metropolitan area, kind of down in that region. And then Long Island also, a few sprouted up there very early on. So now there's a heavy concentration in just about every major metropolitan area.
Wow.
There are a lot along the Philadelphia area, South Jersey, and then up into North Jersey. As I mentioned, there are quite a few out on Long Island, but they're all over Florida. There are, I think I can safely say dozens of spas now in Florida.
Holy cow.
Southern California, Northern California. They're in Colorado, Pacific Northwest, Washington. Then here there's a whole bunch. I got to say like a dozen in the Chicago area.
Really?
3 here in Wisconsin. And then, just anywhere that you could think. Arizona, Texas, enormous amount of spas in Texas. It is it's something that when I think folks realize, and they sort of like to see that there's a cohesion. Sort of like a before you jump on board, it's very, very risky to jump on a franchise that is, 6 spas big. And so I tip my hat to those folks, and those folks still are personally available to us, and we can ask them for advice, or if we have an idea about something. Almost all of the innovations that have happened for the spa company over the long term have come from individual franchisees or staffers within individual spots that said, hey, what about this procedure? What about this kind of service, et cetera? That's why we went with Hand and Stone. We said this is a rock solid group, and I can't talk enough about the other owners that we spoke to. There's a part of franchising where it's called just due diligence. You're calling up a bunch of folks that they give you on this list, and they gave us a list that was miles long. You could pick anybody, and you just ask them about their experience. And they were free to be very frank with us, and they did give us real specifics, which not every franchise that we spoke to in the some of the other business lines wanted to do, and that's totally fine. It's your business.
Sure.
But folks were very, very personal. They acted like they knew us already. And just owner after owner after owner was excited about what they were doing and had such positive things to say.
Right.
And some had been doing it since almost the very beginning, and some were only 6 months into their particular franchise being open, to the public. And so that was a huge thing for me, knowing that you're part of a community somewhere. Even if the franchise offers you something like we have a really amazing Facebook page or something like that, that is an indicator, of how it works, and if you're going to have resources available to you.
That's awesome. So I got a few more questions for you here. You have a business partner?
Husband. And business partner.
Okay. So does he work there?
He is not there on site. He actually is, I like to call him my boss. I don't mind saying that. I'm completely confident saying that in this arena.
Okay.
So he makes a lot of the financial decisions. He will be a directive in terms of where marketing is going to happen or what's important, and is a really great sort of that 10,000-mile view on what's going on, watching trends, watching things happening. And it's a pretty critical component of the organization.
So I talked to a fair amount of people that have a spouse either involved in their business or just some way on some level, right? Maybe just they help them cash the check, and other ones that are like, I am in this more than my spouse, this kind of thing. So it's always interesting to hear the perspective. And so I always ask questions like, when you guys come home at night, are you still talking about business, or is it tough to shut off?
It's I don't think we ever do shut it off. It may, it might be a good idea to figure out a time, like maybe we just say, hey, we're just going to turn our phones off and not talk about. But we actually have several businesses going at the same time, not all of which are in Wisconsin. And so almost everything that we say eventually circles back around to. But, sometimes it's just because the phone rings and that reminds us, oh, yeah, that's right.
Sure.
I have to go maintain the water wall that sits in the lobby or something like that.
That's
but
so
it
awesome.
is. It's definitely another thing. If you want to go into business of any kind, you're going to want to think about the work-life balance.
Sure.
You got to figure out what is the most important thing, where your lines in the sand are, and absolutely do your best to stick by them. It is extremely hard to do, and you may or may not violate any or all of the lines in the sand that you drew, but at least this is a threshold, and we set this as a threshold for a reason.
Sure.
It's really important. So we have Jason and I have a very high tolerance for blending the two, and nice. If a funny story comes up, and then we are actually talking through something at dinner, and then we gotta that is if we're sitting down to dinner at the moment. Exactly. But that is it's something you gotta know going in, I think. But just like the business evolves, it will balloon into something you did not imagine happening. And that's good, and that can be a challenge. The same thing with the work-life balance, that there are going to be times where you just have to go in and take care of business. Sure. No pun intended. No. you gotta go in and just do stuff, because otherwise certain things, they have to be taken care of by a certain time. If certain deliveries don't happen, then I will run out to Woodman's and I will be shoving, getting, the side eye from folks, like, why does she have so many water bottles in that cart? Things like that. You just got to go in and do them. And if that means something else goes on hold, then you got to find a way to kind of create the balance so that you can come around to what was on hold and do that later, because it was important. Interesting.
So, do you ever take the time to relax?
Yes.
Okay.
I do. But I have to say, another thing you want to think about very carefully is the nature of the work, what your role is going to be in, and living through a day or a week of it in your mind when you're making the decisions about it. Whether it's an entrepreneurial thing and you're literally building something from the ground up, or you're going to go the franchise route. Whatever that decision is, if you think through a day or a week of it, you have to figure out, is my role going to be something I'm going to enjoy doing? Because if it is so diametrically opposed to what it is that you want to be doing, you're going to be looking at it going, this is like all I want to do. I just cannot wait to escape at lunch and grab that Big Mac and not care, about anything for a second. And it kind of creates this like negative gravity.
Right.
But if you're in a situation like mine where the focus is actually the people, people, that is really what I end up caring
on
about
both
the
ends,
most.
employees and customers.
Staffers and clients.
Sure.
Exactly. And the interactions between them, caring that the clients are getting along with the staff, caring that the staff's getting along with the staff,
Sure.
that I'm getting along with the
That's
staff.
a thing, right?
It is definitely a thing. Some folks would acknowledge that the business that we're in, the spa/salon/wellness business, can be kind of peppered with petty differences
I would totally agree.
that kind of
Sure.
bubble to the surface or just have ways of exploding. And there's
Sure.
sometimes some unhealthy competition that happens, rivalries that happen. If you're working in anything that is commission-based, it can be a very real factor.
Sure.
But we are very careful about that. And I want to make sure that going for, that I am doing what I love. Taking
Right.
care of somebody is how I would define client service. And taking care of somebody is also what I would define as an owner or manager.
Absolutely.
So choosing the role of manager, which is one of the roles that I do there, was a decision.
Okay.
I didn't start out being the manager. I started out just being the owner and then wound up stepping into the manager role and discovering that I love it.
So that was not intentional.
It
Being
was
the manager.
definitely not the original idea.
Okay.
But what ended up happening was the initial workload is not as much as it's going to be after the grand, obviously, because you start somewhere.
Sure.
And the
Run
idea is to
one.
grow beyond it.
Right.
Exactly. You want it to mushroom and grow and
Sure.
kind of almost take a crazy life of its own. But initially, so it was manageable. And so the role that I saw myself in was sort of what my husband is doing now, that 10,000 mile view of
sure.
things, like sort of watching the trends, tapping in, trying to figure out how to solve anything that came up on a day-to-day basis, and then create a system for it so that anybody else could replicate the solution, right?
Sure.
So like if all of a sudden they were like, well, what do we do when the phones go down? Like that's something that a manager doesn't necessarily have to think through, but if somebody's thought about it before, you have a procedure in place.
Sure.
We didn't have something that specific because every spa in the system, in the Hand and Stone system, has their phone system done differently, for example. So that is something that's not going to come down from
All
corporate.
right.
So there's an enormous amount of those things that we sort of like found our way through, and it was kind of like going through a cave and you don't have a light and you're like feeling your way along.
Oh,
You're
sure.
like, oh, there's a dip down there. Don't step that way too far. We figured that kind of stuff out after a period of time. But the long view, like
Right.
it became very, very clear all of a sudden. There was like, oh, I do want to be more involved. Like I have ideas
Interesting.
for
Okay.
this. And in terms of resolving disputes that came up about what procedures were the most effective,
Sure.
what was the best way to communicate from the front lobby to the back of the house where there's a digital setup, so the therapists and the estheticians can sort of see their clients coming in, but they don't know exactly who all those people sitting in the lobby are per se. So we used to call back and forth, and then we discovered that if we called back and forth, that one of our phone lines was tied up calling the back. And not only that, if the client wanted to add something on, let's say they wanted to add on a half hour, and we might have been able to slide it in, but we didn't know if the therapist was willing to give up their break, let's say,
Sure.
to add the additional half hour. So the phones, obviously the client is going to hear you asking and then sort of like watch your face intently and sort of be like, is she rolling her eyes or is she going to let me have that
sure.
half hour? Whereas the solution we ended up with was an actual like a chat, an in-house chat.
Okay.
And we very, very quickly and very discreetly could be nodding politely to the client as they were giving us the request. And then we could actually shoot a really quick note to the back, and then that therapist could shoot back saying like, yeah, or oh my gosh, I haven't eaten since, 9 this morning or something.
Sure.
So we could very gently sort of create a more client servicely refined way
Nice.
of actually
Sure.
letting them down easy if we needed to, or giving them the good news. It was all just a very smooth and very quiet operation. So
Okay.
that would be an example of things that we just kind of worked out as we went. And those are definitely things that a manager can do, but because I was so wanting to be hands-on,
Sure.
eventually I morphed into that role. But the key, back to our point, is you have to find that out about yourself, or you have to see if you can know that
Right.
about yourself very honestly beforehand.
So if you had a manager in place initially, did they go away, or were you in addition to?
Yeah, they ended up stepping out, and I was there initially, but it was kind of this thing where the staff was very small, so it wasn't that it was a huge managerial task to manage. It was more so the fact that the business was young, and let's say I had already opened 5 similar types of spas.
Sure.
There's always that incubation period where folks are just finding out your name. Folks would kind of come into hand and stone, like they would call in and be like, "Do you guys do granite?" Because the name of it's stone.
There's
And we'd
stone.
be like, "Well, sorta."
Vague, yeah.
Yeah,
See the font?
yeah, exactly. We would ask them if they were. We told them what we did, and we would find out if they were interested at all. But yeah, that's totally fine. Just folks in this area. We were the first hand and stone spa in the Madison area.
Okay.
So it just was not a lot of brand recognition.
Sure.
And that's okay. Like that is a situation that Jason and I had seen before, and
Sure.
we knew what it took. We knew it was going to take an enormous amount of energy. The other thing that you want to have in terms of that interaction with your spouse is an agreement on the financials. You got to know, like, how much are we willing to pump into this? How big of a business loan do we want to get? Or where is the threshold in terms of like how far out, how many months can we be taking a loss?
Sure.
Before we decide, we've got to kick something else into gear here.
Right.
So one of the benefits of a franchise is that there are probably owners that have been in that situation before, and we've seen turnaround after turnaround happen. Like, we know that it's possible. We know that there's no
Sure.
magic to what we're doing. We just have to, you have to care.
Okay,
Basically, you
sure.
just got to care about the details and care about how those details affect the people.
So the if-then scenarios have already been played out. People have business plans, or they have stuff that it's already happened in reality in a different location.
Yes.
So you can duplicate the model.
You can somewhat. You have to set your own business plan. You have to decide for yourself you do have to know your region a bit.
Okay.
You got to know that the North Midwest is a little bit different than South Florida. You've got to
Sure.
know like when people's availability are. If you're in a primarily like suburban/rural area,
Sure.
that's going to have a different series of busy times than folks that are primarily corporate, hardcore downtown, white collar.
Sure.
It's just all a very different blend of things. So you want to do yourself that favor. You definitely want to do your
Plus,
homework.
finding employees, I imagine, is a
Yep.
different. That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. Do you want to go there now, or do you want me to?
I would love to go into I tell you, of all the mistakes that I've made, I can probably narrow down about 98% of them to employees.
Oh, that's a few.
And so it's been a lot of mistakes. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong. So I just love learning about that, and I have to just press into people's heads that when they're considering starting a business, that one, consider getting employees, right? Because generally speaking, they're worth it. But on the flip side, don't just take for granted that everybody has a fantastic work ethic. That most people don't, at least in my experience. Or there's some training that's involved, and there's a headache that comes with employees, generally speaking. So I always love to learn, especially with business like massage therapy, where I imagine that there's some employees that come and go, and you're dealing with people, clients, and that's a very, it's not like you're just ordering a cheeseburger, right? And like, can you tell me who gave you that cheeseburger? Couldn't even describe them. But like, who rubbed you for an hour? You should probably know that, right? Right? Or be somewhat familiar with being able to describe them, right? Good or bad. Like,
Right.
I have no idea. I fell asleep, maybe. But I mean, like, it seems like it's more, I don't know if intimate's the right word, but there's more of an interaction there.
It is a human contact business. Every single service provider that we have, every single service that we provide is that. It's a little bit different. Like when someone's cutting your hair, it's a little bit different. They are, kind of like washing your head down
Sure.
before you go in and that kind of thing, and that's fine. But what we're doing here, it's a one-on-one situation. It is very intimate. It's a human contact business. And I don't even think of that part of it as a business. I think of it very much as it might sound a little flaky, but I think of it as like it's kind of a healing moment in the way that
Okay.
a hug is healing. You know,
Sure.
like if a kid just really needs a hug, or you're seeing a friend that you haven't seen for a very long time, and you give a hug. There's something about that, like being together, and it's an acknowledgement. It's a very safe space.
Sure.
Everybody in our business is licensed. They have incredible amounts of background checks done, that kind of thing. It's very, very important that people walk into a place like ours and feel like, okay, you know, as you were talking about your dad, and folks just sort of could be in an uncomfortable situation or an unfamiliar situation. And it's got to be something that people, you know, you're making an agreement, you know, that I feel safe enough, you know, to disrobe to this level, whatever
Sure.
that may be. And the therapist also is acknowledging a trust. Most great therapists will even thank you for it at the end in some way, whether through their energy or
Sure.
with using those words and just saying, thank you for allowing me to help you relax today, or
Oh, it's fantastic.
you know, that kind of thing. It is
Sure.
it's an acknowledgement that you spend time. You spend time with a human being that entire hour, whether you conked out after the first minute and a half
Sure.
and just snoozed your way through the whole thing.
Right.
If you're in the middle of a facial and you're just chatting away the entire time, let's say, it could
Right.
be. The experiences are as unique as the people that come in and as unique as the therapist performing the services.
Sure. That's interesting. Going back to my dad, he went to chiropractors. He probably still does. I don't know, a ton. And so I think he was expecting something more transactional
Sure.
than something
That's
as
quiet.
intimate or as like
Very
healing.
quiet.
Yeah, where a chiropractor, you go in there, they just crack your neck for 30 seconds and then pay him and you go. I think that's what he was expecting, right? Like a drive-through massage kind of thing.
Exactly like that.
So when
the car wash.
So yeah, when they said essentially, I mean, the disrobe thing probably threw him off for a loop, but I think that they were willing to take the time. He was just so out of his element. Like, what do you like? We're not rushing through this at all. What is this place?
Oh, sure.
That it just seemed just completely outside of what he was used to, right?
Sure.
His fast food, fast chiropractor, just bang through everything as fast as possible, right? And then he comes to this place. They're like this robe. We got nice music. It's quiet. Lights are dim. It looks like a comfortable bed, not some torture chair or something like
Right.
that a normal chiropractor
That
would
flips
have.
you upside down.
Yeah. So I'm sure I'll apologize on behalf of him to any massage therapist that has ever come across someone like that.
Well, you know, it's very personal. It is a unique type of person that actually can make it all the way through the massage therapy program. There are lots of people, I think, that have the heart for it.
Sure.
But it is kind of intense training, and it is a licensed profession. And the folks that are at our spa are nationally certified, which is in Wisconsin, you can practice massage therapy without having the national certification. But everyone there are all these steps that you need to go through. The training costs a penny. You know, like it really, you do have to invest in this, and folks take out student loans in order to do it. And it's a real investment in a calling. I feel like it's much more that. The folks that we've got quite a few, maybe a disproportionate amount of veterans on our staff, folks that have been doing it 6 years, 8 years, 11 years, 16 years, some closer to the 20-year
Wow.
range. For something as physical as massage therapy,
Yeah.
folks could be like, whoa, I can't imagine even like having the strength to do that. They must be in awesome shape. They probably have really good mechanics is the key.
Okay.
You don't have to be, you know,
Sure.
like a supreme
Popeye.
athlete to do it. Exactly.
Sure.
It helps, I'm sure, if you have really big forearms.
Sure.
But you have to have the heart. You have to sustain that person-to-person contact
Sure.
on a daily basis with sometimes total strangers, sometimes folks that follow you everywhere you go,
Right.
and they're with you for years maybe. But that's the harder part, I've discovered. The folks that have been doing it for a while have an ability. This is for estheticians too. This is for people that have been doing it year in and year out.
Okay.
And they have this ability to care about that person. You may or may not remember if was this the lady whose grandson was, like fell off his bike, or was the other lady like those details,
Sure.
like maybe keep notes or that kind of thing. That's totally fine. But the ability to really be there with them in the moment, the person receiving the service feels it, even if they are asleep. I completely believe that.
That is awesome.
There's an ability. So we're talking not only about a technical ability and
Sure.
a physical strength or aptitude, and then the patience and the persistence to complete the training programs, go through the licensing. The licensing itself is a bear. There are definitely stories. Some of the most accomplished therapists I know did not pass on the first try.
Really?
So, yeah, it's a serious health-related
This is for
and
the national
wellness-related-
one or the state
correct,
one? Or?
for the
Okay.
national one.
Okay.
So this is someone that clearly is doing it because they want to do this.
Sure.
They make it all the way through, and then over the course of time, it's like one person after another, after another, after another. And you're very right. It isn't like a chiropractor or, with all due respect to chiropractors, they're so great at what they do. But this is a different kind of mentality, and
Sure.
you're in there for, lots of places offer 20-minute massages, 10-minute massages, a half hour. We do offer a half hour, but the greater majority of our services are in that hour range.
Okay.
Often an hour and a half. Sometimes folks will even do double sessions close to 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
So
All
that
right.
is a long time to be in there with a person.
Sure.
And after a little while, if your mind actually is not in the therapy,
Then
the
it's
same
work.
thing, then it becomes labor. Then it becomes like this, I can do this.
Right.
And even though it is enormously rewarding, it's got to be rewarding to you in that way in order for
Sure.
you to sustain it and do it more and more and more.
Absolutely.
And the folks that love it will pursue further education. You can see it in their eyes and the way that they talk about people.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you find talent like that? Where do you go? And
This is where you tell us the secret now, right?
I wish I could just say they all come to us from monster.com. But, honestly, it is, it's always going to be like it's not even a one-pronged approach or a two-pronged approach or a three-pronged approach. It is finding every way that you can think of and chasing every single way that you thought of and doing it.
Okay.
Finding out about the networks, the schools in the area that might
Sure.
train for that particular skill that you need. If you are not, there are plenty of employers who don't require licensing necessarily, so you're going to have a much wider pool of people coming
Sure.
in. Our front desk is a little bit like that, where
Okay.
your license is not required certainly, but the finding the folks is one of the biggest things that I do as
Okay.
a manager.
All right.
Like going out and making the contacts with the training resources in the area. We have amazing schools in the area. We've got Broadview. We've got MATC, Madison College. We've got East West Institute of Healing Arts, which these are schools that are turning out, honestly, some of the most gifted therapists that we have
Oh, wow.
came out of those programs. And not even necessarily just like, last year. These are folks that trained, were working on their own for several years and came in and wanted to split their time with us and then with their private practices,
Sure.
which we permit. So it's sort of like building the kind of institution is how I look at it, that the kind of people you want to come work there would want to come work at your place.
That's awesome.
That's critical. That is something where I think we have a word of mouth buzz
Okay.
about how we treat our staffers and how we view work-life balance, which is critical.
Sure.
So it's something where initially we really did start with a skeleton crew. We started with just a handful of therapists, a handful of estheticians, and basically a handful of front desk
When you say
staff.
handful, how many is that?
It
day
was
one.
probably less than 5
Okay.
of
Okay.
each. Less than 5 of each.
Sure. Less than 5 of each. Okay.
Right.
So was it difficult to find them initially over the course of that few months?
I would say yes and no, because so we were actually hiring before the lobby was even finished being constructed.
Okay.
So there wasn't even a way that I could go through and show them the 11 rooms or
Sure.
these are the facilities and these are some of the nicest ones that were, that you could see for the client and for
Sure.
the
So
esthetician.
just side tangent. Did you build your building from scratch or
No.
you
When I say
remodeled?
broke ground, it was air quotes.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
we, next door to Joanne, we're part of a center.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so we.
So there was a build out.
Right.
Okay.
And at the time that we were hiring, that wasn't even completed to the point where you could walk through without a hard hat
Oh,
on.
interesting. Okay.
So it's sort of like, initially you're kind of like, build the dream, buy the dream with me.
Right, right.
Like they kind of like, imagine yourself here and it's going to be beautiful. And there's going to be
Sure.
a fountain in the lobby and
Sure.
beautiful skylights and, that kind of thing.
Let's
It
play
was,
baseball in Iowa, right?
Right, exactly. If you build it. It's not always that way for someone who's like going, how can I leave, the spot that I have right now where it's a very predictable income and jump
Sure.
on board with someone as exciting as you make it sound? I've never heard of hand and stone. Do you guys do granite too?
Sure.
It's kind of like this. How do you create a scenario where people want to? So we're willing to have people come on a less than full-time basis. And they were able to kind of keep an anchor in one area and then give us a try, and then discovered over time that we actually are what we say that we are.
Gotcha.
And we did build up the there's a rather large membership base.
Okay.
Where folks come in and they are we call them the regulars,
Okay.
the family per se. We
Sure.
want everyone to feel like family on their visit when they come in, but there are folks
Sure.
that literally feel like family to us.
All right.
And we know them that well, and we're able to tailor services. And we do it from the very first one all the way through to like whatever it is that you would like. We definitely don't insist that our therapists or estheticians do things exactly this way, regardless of, you know, what their skin type is or what their particular situation is now. And so they get that benefit of that one-on-one, the long-term relationships.
Sure.
But that is something that when we first started, we didn't have, obviously.
Okay.
You know, we did have a member number one.
Sure.
And you build from there on. And the initial staff had to see in what management was doing, in what I was doing, in what the front desk was doing, and how things were handled, and whether or not their books filled up.
Sure.
And so that was the beauty of the franchise. The franchise, they don't just sort of say, here's how you should run your shop from, you know, 9 a.m. on a Monday all the way through till 6 p.m. on the Sunday.
Sure.
Where they also are looking at how do you reach the people that are going to be your best clients, or how do you get the message out? Right. And they want to support you with marketing materials that look like they're talking about the kind of spa that the type of clients that you want to be coming in would like to go to.
Sure.
So it is all built around this this core belief. But the core belief has to be real. It can't be something where I'm going to churn and burn. We're just going to have folks come in, as many as possible. And if they don't love their services after the third one, then that's fine or whatever. It's got to be something that you're actually investing in every single person.
So you're talking a little bit about sales for selling employees on working with you before you're even open, right?
Oh, sure.
So was there a challenge there?
Yes,
Okay.
there was. And we didn't start with as large a crew as we would have liked. We were completely overwhelmed with folks coming in. The demand in the Madison-Dane County area.
Generally a good problem, right?
It's a fantastic problem. And I know we're not the only business in the area
Sure.
that probably would love to be offering more services than we are at the moment, or more goods or whatever it is.
Sure.
But it initially, you know, when you're first launching, it almost doesn't matter how much demand you have if they can't find you, or if they don't know that you're offering what it is they're looking for.
Yep.
So we kicked off a massive, it was like a Facebook contest that ran, and we just had like little giveaways. But the big giveaways were, starting with our grand opening, we just gave away 100 free services. Like,
wow.
we budgeted for that,
Okay.
and just said we just need folks to kind of come in and sort
Sure.
of see who we are. And I can't emphasize the importance of social media. I can't emphasize the importance of responsiveness to folks, however it is they're trying to contact you. Because
Sure.
every single, we're really close to Cecil's Shoe Repair,
Okay.
who is just an institution in Madison. And
Sure.
the way that he is like my, when I think about like how do we want to run our business? You know, I think, well, you know, you could sort of be like, yeah, it's just shoes. And let's be honest, there's always a time where you're like halfway through your, you know, morning, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I just like, this is just one more phone call that I did. Everybody hits those spots or whatever. But how do you become an institution? You know, like, people have to like seek you out after a little while. They need to know, oh my gosh, this was the best, whatever it was, shoe repair,
Sure.
zipper repair that I ever had. And anywhere else that I've gone, you know, I just keep coming back to Cecil. So
Right.
it's a little bit like that for us, you
All
know,
right.
where from the get-go, if you take that seriously, then the 11 people that came in on your first day,
Sure.
you know, are like every single one of them. You want to make them feel like, you know, a king or a queen.
Sure.
And you want, the best way to do that, I have discovered, is for your staff to feel that you treat them that way.
Mm-hmm.
I tell everybody that's interested in coming to join our team that that's our emphasis. That
Okay.
we, as much as we customize services for clients,
Sure.
we customize the work environment for each person that comes in.
Gotcha.
It definitely is easier and faster to just set up a system and tell everybody, look, you gotta love the system or leave it. And we're the exact opposite. We actually will customize based on the availabilities or the needs or the, you know, that work-life balance
Sure.
thing. We know a lot about what's going on in people's lives.
Has that been a challenge as you scaled then?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. And there's, I would say, that is something that I've taken on. And if we ever need a second manager, or if we do have quite a few assistant managers on at the moment, and that's also part of our strategies, we need folks in leadership positions. The worst mistake that I made starting up was trying to do too much on my own.
All
You
right.
know, like that interest that I was describing earlier
Sure, yep.
can sort of get you, you know, into a spot where you're like, I can't run out and get the water bottles because, that
Sure.
should have been assigned to one of the other staffers per
Yep.
se, or running out to get change for the drawers or things like that.
Sure.
Just as you're discovering, you don't want to be the hub of the wheel. You don't want
Right.
to be like the funnel that chokes back
Yep.
everybody else's productivity. And so we figured that out pretty early on. But we do want to set it up so that everybody feels like they're being listened to. And as we scale, that is the perpetual question, I think, for everybody. John Marco is the gentleman who founded Hand and Stone. He himself is a physical therapist, and he knows how to be a great service provider.
Sure.
But he always, I can imagine him knowing how to make a business out of a fantastic series of services that he could offer.
Sure.
And then building that out further and then scaling that. And how do you maintain that person-to-person that caring that I spoke about? He kind of epitomizes it. And it's got to be the same thing where at a certain point you do need to let go a little bit. Not every single phone call is going to be handled the way that you might have handled it.
Right.
And that just becomes a part of it where if you commit to the training and you commit to coming back around, I'm sure I have not handled every single request for cancellation of my membership perfectly, but I want people to know that we care. And just go drop to my knees and go skyward. Why?
Sure.
But no, we actually train all of our front desk staff to ensure that someone's cancellation experience is just as good as when they first signed up.
Interesting.
It's got to be something where any interaction with Hand and Stone is something where they're like, well, they may not have handled that really well, but somebody's going to get back to me and make this right.
All right. That's right.
So if it doesn't happen instantly in the moment, at least we've got systems set up where people can actually convey concerns to me, and then we can either, I don't need to be the person that calls them back, but we'll make a decision on it as to how to move forward. And generally, it'll be, we will brainstorm as to how we can get that person to feel like at least I was taken care of.
All right. It's interesting that you talk about not being able to do everything. There's different perspectives on that, right? There's some people that believe that only they can do it. And there's other people like you, it sounds like, have evolved to the point where you understand that I can't do it.
Right.
So I have this thing with my business coaching that I call Noctiliety. I say this is a disease. It's Noctiliety. No one can do it like I do it. So I'm like, there's some people that are just like, you can't do everything. Even though you may be the best at it, which it's unlikely that you are at everything. Like, that's not even reasonable
That's
to
exactly
ask,
right.
right? But some people believe that they are, and they believe that they have to do everything. From sending out invoices, answering phones, checking in customers, maybe even doing the massage itself. I'm like, it's not, what you're asking yourself to do isn't reasonable, and your customer service is going to suffer from it. Your business as a whole is going to suffer from it. And some people just are oblivious to that fact. It's interesting how when people, they start a business, so there has to be some form of ego there initially, right?
Right,
To say,
sure.
like, I'm not going to be an employee. I know how to run a business way better than that, right? So, I mean, there has to be some of that. So I understand that can be a challenge for some people. But it's interesting how there's so many business owners that get stuck on the other end there that I can't let other people do it because they'll mess up.
Right. And the truth is, they will, and you will as the business owner or as the manager or whatever your role is, any kind of leadership position, you're constantly having to make those decisions.
Yes.
Even as you go. You could set up the plan that beats all plans of every plan in the universe, and then day one you open the doors, and then the toilets clog, and in a spa, by the way, the bathrooms are critical.
Oh,
it's so
yeah.
important that there not be funny lingering Windex smells. There
Sure.
can't be anything that it's like, oh, this smells like, school after hours when it's being scrubbed down. It's got to be, so the bathrooms are really important. So that's why I bring that up.
Well,
But,
that's huge. Not like some Tony bar where you
oh
don't
no,
care.
you can't have toilet paper running out and just sitting there, just run out or whatever.
Sure.
So that being said, there are a lot of details to attend to. And so if your toilets clog on opening night, and folks are wanting to go to the bathroom and you're having to direct them to Denny's around the corner, things will happen. So that's
Sure.
a cardinal rule. I think the wise, circumspect manager or business owner is going to just acknowledge
Sure.
if that is how out of control circumstances are. Certainly, things in my own organization or things within my own structure that I've built that are out
Sure.
of my genius mind are going to get challenged by reality. And so that resilience is one of the biggest things we've learned.
Sure.
An example would be, this is probably the hardest thing about my role at the spa is actually informing a client that their service has to be rescheduled because a therapist called in sick. They clearly can't come in and potentially spread what it is they have. And nobody wants a service where the therapist is continually sniffing or anything like that. And so we try to let folks know as much as we can without divulging too many details as to the circumstances of the cancellation. So, and most folks understand. Back to that intimacy thing, you're in a room with an individual and the professional has set aside an hour or 2 hours of their time just for you. And that is how they, that they've committed to that time. If they can't come in, then both of them are out. Like the therapist is also out and the client is also out. That interaction. And so it's a disappointment for everybody that I don't have a single staffer who is nonchalant about that. They try everything that they can, and sometimes I actually need to encourage them to stay home because they know their clients by name that day, and they just don't want to, disappoint anybody. So it's a really hard thing to do, but it's something where I am reminded over and over again of that just life happens factor, and the Murphy's Law factor is almost always, the same thing.
It's like the coughing guy on the radio, right?
Exactly.
I want to ask you what the worst decision that you've ever made in the business has been, and what was the result?
I've actually no. It is that decision to try and take on too many things initially.
All right.
So my husband and I are not new to business. We're not new to client service, but we were new to spas, and so there were just certain things where the water bottle thing is a real life example. The toilets clogging, also a real life example.
First day?
No, it was not the first day.
Okay.
But things like that happen with the physical plant. Like things just happen where you're like, why is there an alarm sounding somewhere hidden in the back wall? And it would be something that we didn't even install. Things like that. And you're like, okay, a beep in a retail scenario, you just have like,
the
some
white
funky
noise.
music, and no one's going to notice. And in a spa thing, it's like red alert, red alert.
You hear a pin drop.
Yeah,
right?
and in a spa, you have to panic quietly. So that's how we respond to everything. There's like this sort of like hush. If the hush gets deeper, now everybody in your audience knows why. It means we're addressing something.
Funny.
But things like that will happen. And so that was my biggest mistake by far. If I am spending too much time sort of like running out to get water or not just anything like that at all, then that is less time that I have to figure out something on the personnel side or something on the client side. And not that I have to be the person that does that either, but I do think that looking back, I do wish that we had phased into a larger staff up front faster.
So is that you doing all this stuff? Was that an active decision, or was that more or less just a result of stuff happening?
Well, the active decision was me deciding to step into the day-to-day in an increased way. And then from there on, it was just like this like
snowball.
Yeah, it was. It was like a mess of spaghetti. It's kind of what my day looked like. And that is definitely something but that is not a bad, worst thing to have happened.
Sure.
We've had things happen like, disasters where we had to replace half the flooring in the couples room because there was like I'll just call it a water incident, a water event. Just things like you have to take care of that kind of stuff. We are licensed, we're inspected. We've got fire inspections coming. We've got everything. We've just got to be completely together.
Right.
And so there are certain things that just can't wait for business. We had the facility that we're in, the back courtyard had a little gas line, and the gas line valve did what it was supposed to do and released. And so there was an enormous smell of gas coming in, and fire department came in, and folks in the couples room, in all of the individual service rooms, and it was like this kind of, they were quiet too, which was awesome. But we had to like inform everybody what was happening and let them know they were in no danger of any sort.
So
mid-massage, you smell gas, and then you gotta like
just letting you know you're okay.
Pile the clothes back on, and hope you don't light a spark. Like whatever it is. We were in no danger of any sort, but the smell alone, I would have probably made a call to move folks out. But things like that happen, and so that you have to like decide how much of that stuff it's going to happen. Then all the things that are predictable. Offshore as much as you can of that to somebody else that you really love and really trust.
Nice. Do you read?
I do.
Fiction, nonfiction?
Any in a row.
Okay. Do you read any business books?
Haven't in a while.
Okay, I was just going to ask you if you have a favorite. Do you have a favorite book at all?
I would say To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay, that's all right. I've heard of it. I'm sure a couple people like that one.
I have loved it since I was a very, very little kid.
Oh, nice.
That's
awesome.
the one that I reread.
If you knew that success in one new idea that you have for a business, right? Everybody's got these ideas rolling around in their head. But if you knew for sure that that one idea was going to be successful, which idea would you implement?
I would find a way to measure and then feed back to the city about traffic flow.
Interesting. All right.
I feel like the traffic flow is one of these like intangibles for an experience, if
Okay.
you want to call it that. And it could be an experience at the mall. It could be, why do certain malls have enormous amounts of parking in the back and almost no parking up front? Like
Sure.
where the majority of folks will be coming in and off
Right.
the Beltline or off of the main thoroughfares, things like that.
Sure.
That does percolate around in my mind, and I've often wondered. I am this is with all due respect to the folks that actually do this for the city.
Sure, sure.
But I feel like just as a business consulting idea,
Mm-hmm.
that is something that I often will wonder, why is there a median strip here and not here, and it'll be 50 yards away, and I'm like, this makes more sense because you can see where people have walked
Sure.
the grass down to the bare
Oh, sure, down
ground,
to
and
the
you're
dirt.
like, this is where the sidewalk needs to be, or this is where the cross should happen, and
Sure.
things like that. And I feel like could be from all the years that I spent in New York City, but like pedestrian traffic and how people get to the businesses that they get to.
Sure.
Why do they stop at this Starbucks instead of the one that in Manhattan anyway? There's another one a block and a half down. Why do they stop at this one instead of that one?
Sure.
All that stuff is going to impact businesses in the area, and
Sure.
they can impact them for good. And there's always an inertia to anything that involves dealing with traffic and construction and that
Sure.
kind of thing, of course, but that's the long answer to your
Interesting.
really
That's
short
awesome.
question.
No, I like that. Just the flow and stuff like that. I was thinking about an answer in my head for the parking lot thing, because the parking lot, mall or whatever, probably wants to show that they're full with a small parking lot up front and then having actual parking in the back.
Sure.
But I don't. From a practical point of view, that's useless.
Right, exactly. If you have repeat business at a mall,
Right.
then you're going to have repeat annoyed clients.
Right,
coming
exactly.
in. Because after a while, hopefully the mall is not there just for show and like, hey, let's attract people coming in.
Right,
You want
right.
people to come back and not dread having to spin around to the backside.
Yeah, I think I know what mall you're talking about, and I have no good answer there. I don't know if anybody does.
With all due respect.
Yeah, right. Fair enough. Can you tell us what is your address again?
We're at 6733 Odana Road
Okay.
over on the west side of Madison.
So that's essentially just off the Beltline.
It is off the Gann Road, and we've got folks coming in from, surprisingly, far afield. We got folks coming in from Fort Atkinson, from these are regulars, from McFarland,
wow.
from Belleville, some as far out as Spring Green.
Holy cow, you guys must be good at what you do.
Wanakee. Yeah,
That's a little hike.
I think it's because if people invest in themselves, it is something where you kind of like shop around and you want to find some place where you're like, this is a place I could see myself. This feels like a home
Sure.
away from home for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jenny. We're going to wrap it up here as soon as I figure out how to work some buttons here. I want to thank you guys for listening here. This is Authentic Business Adventures. This has been Authentic Business Adventures, like I just told you, the business program that brings you the struggles, stories, and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. Coming to you from the Sun Prairie Community Studios, radio underwritten by Bank of Sun Prairie. I am James Kateman, business coach at Draw In Customers Business Coaching and author of the Bold Business Book. We'd like to thank you, our listeners, and our guest, Jenny Knight of Hand and Stones Massage. Thank you, Jenny. Find us airing on 103.5 Wednesdays at 6 p.m. and Sundays at 2 p.m., as well as at sunprairiemediacenter.com. We can also be found morning, noon, and night at the podcast link on drawincustomers.com. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week. Stay awesome and enjoy the process.